And lastly, don't forget to respect each other's pronouns, if preferably using gender neutral pronouns by the position, or if you want to refer to judges, you can just call us judges or panelists as a whole. With that being said, under motion of this House will compensate individuals proven not to be guilty in trial, welcoming Prime Minister to start. Time is yours, see here.
Hello, check. Am I audible?
Audible, as well as, oh yeah, one more note, if you do not have connection issue, feel free to open your cams. I think probably this is also because it's being recorded.
Okay. Um, I guess I'll be taking my UI through unmuting because I want to be opening the chat box, and it's also going to work for every single interruption within the debate. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. First, let's talk about the mechanism on the account of how it is exactly going to look like. I think it is pretty simple. One, it is going to be based on time spent being falsely accused. Like the amount of money that the state is supposed to be paying the defendant is going to be based on the time that they spent being falsely accused. Why exactly is this going to be the case? One, notice that the damage that is going to be accrued is going to be directly correlated to the time spent. For example, the more time you spend being accused, the more time for mass media to report your cases, for example, the more time that they're going to be able to engage with more population and for gossips to actually reach your neighborhood. That means that there's going to be much more time for your position as a criminal, for example, to be ingrained deep into the psyche of the people closest to you, of the people within your work, or the people that is supposed to be hiring you, for example. But second, notice that this is also going to directly correlate with the damage to financials of the people that's going to be falsely accused. That means that when you are falsely accused, there is going to be lost opportunity at capital accumulation because you cannot work during your time being falsely accused because you're supposed to be held in detention by the police because they do not want you to escape, for example. And at the end of the day, you're also going to be losing your future opportunities. People are not obviously going to want to correlate themselves with you if you are, for example, have a criminal records, or if you, for example, have been detained by the police because it is going to be directly correlated to their own good names. But third, on the account of who are going to be taking the money, we think that's going to be simple. There's going to be in the form of the defendant, because one, they're going to be the one who will be losing the most time. They will be the ones who are going to be having the damaged psyche, for example, from being detained by the cops out of their own will. But second, they're also going to be the ones who actually lose most financial opportunities within the status quo. But on the account of contextualization, let's talk about how does the justice system actually look like. One, notice that the justice system is currently still highly prejudiced. That one, police culture that basically works based on the principle of first come, first serve. Notice that within the status quo, the oldest service member, there's the conservative boomers who actually have more time to accrue political will, who actually have more time to accrue more better names for themselves and get promoted in the higher position, can basically set the tone of the entire police forces and institution using their political will within that institution. For example, they can promote people with the same worldview into a better position as them. They can basically ingrain racial profiling propaganda within their speeches. They can normalize cases of minor discrimination towards minority. For example, yeah, using women as a source of their jokes, or basically trying to racially profile individuals based on their races, etc., etc. But second, notice that the justice system on the judicial level also works the same. It is going to be based on who has the most financial abilities, who accrue the most financial power, abilities to hire good lawyers or bend the public perception into criminalizing and demonizing other people through their speeches, through their charisma, or simply using money to intimidate. Meaning that at the end of the day, there's going to be much more incentive for the entire police forces or the institution that is supposed to be upholding justice, for example, to literally catch and detain other people simply because of the political will of these individuals. That is how the justice system works, right? Not that within the current status quo, regular people who does not have the same political incentive, for example, as CEOs, as people of higher political power, will require their cases to be viral simply to have the people and or the police look into their cases and try to detain these individuals. This means, right, there's going to be much more incentive on a judicial level also to basically misuse their power. What does it mean? Notice that one, within the process of criminalizing, it is already bad because there are going to be windows of oppression and misuse of power in the justice system itself. There is to say that minorities are going to be most likely to be falsely arrested than majority population because they already have bad reputation against them. There is going to be perpetuated by stigma in the police institution, for example, that at the end of the day is going to work against them. But how is it exactly going to solve the problem of this? Notice that at the end of the day, this is going to have a much better process in court because there is going to be much less incentive to falsely accuse someone. Because one, not only are you going to be damaging your own reputation, for example, as a politician, if you decided to detain the wrong person, or the police institution, if you decide to criminalize the wrong person, for example, but it's going to be resulting in a financial damage to the state. Notice that although the state is going to be the only one that is going to be paying for these cases, right? For these cases of misuse of power or misuse of detention, for example, notice that it is still going to be bad for their own institution. Because one, notice that if, for example, the state notices that the police institution within a certain area is losing that much money from their misuse of power, there's going to be much less incentive for the state to keep giving them the same amount of money to work on their program, for example. There are going to be much more incentive for the state to penalize certain individual that's going to be responsible for this. There's going to be much more incentive for the state to penalize the commander of the police officers, for example. This means at the higher level, there's going to be much less incentive for people to actually misuse their power and accrue much more political incentive using a problematic worldview, for example. But why is it going to be bad, right? Why is at the end of the day, is the people going to be justified into taking the money from the state? Notice that within the process of the court, it is going to be already bad for individuals in the process of proving themselves innocent. Notice that one, if you're for example getting criminalized by someone, one, you will have to be arrested, for example, in your home, in public park, where everyone can literally see. And notice that there has already been history of police using excessive forces, right, to determine their own cases, to basically detain someone in order for them to actually protect themselves. Notice that it has already been incentivized by a lot of money that is coming to them and a lot of money that is coming into their own self-protection and them buying guns, for example. Notice then that this inherently means that in order for you to actually be arrested, a lot of people are going to know that you are going to get arrested, and this will result in a bad reputation for you. But two, right, within the cases of damaged reputation, notice that although there is not going to be that much criminal record going around if you are, for example, falsely accused to begin with, there is still going to be less incentive for people to actually hire you, because at the end of the day, you already have a better reputation for getting into cahoots with the police and so on and so forth. But second of all, it is already going to be dangerous for your own relationship with your families, because at the end of the day, it has already going to be ingrained within their psyche, for example, that you're a bad person, that you already have been marked by the police and cops, for example, that even if you're being falsely accused, it still means that you're going to be losing your reputation within your families. It already means that you're going to be damaging your reputation, and we think that is going to be much more harmful towards these individuals. So at the end of the day, we are proud to propose.
Then the speaker for the fan speech. Next, calling upon leader up. Let me sure see here.
Okay, am I audible?
Yep, audible and visible.
Okay, POI preference, just directly unmute. If I do not engage or I say no, then I reject your POI. My proper pronouns are CD. Setting up my own timer. Okay. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Judges, before I rebut anything, we're gonna jump into my arguments. Let's start with the framing, because I feel that OG has a lack of characterization than framing, and it was too narrow to case specific. First, the resources of a country is limited. They cannot accept everyone who wants to take their adversary to court because a country does not have resources for that. Judges, police, and justice system would select cases with enough evidence to show whether or not it is worth it to take to court. Two, you need a valid reason for them to be there, enough evidence to possibly incriminate someone, and for them to necessarily be there, example, if you're in a murder case, you are found to have been in the crime scene or interacting with the victim, etc. This already happens in status quo, where since the resources are limited, the entire justice system will only select a few cases that are worth it to bring into case. Furthermore, if you do get to the point of being sued, it proves that you already have a hand in it. You're involved in some way. It would be a waste of time and resources for justice system to prosecute a random person with no relation to a crime because it would be a win for the defendant anyway. So there is a valid moral argument to check whether you are in it or not. 4, public defender provided by the government, so you're not really wasting any money, even if you don't have money and are assigned by the public defendant, since they are part of the judicial system. They would have the incentive to really point out their client is not worth being sued to the court. But let's now look at the world that the government wants. What are the negative implications of establishing this world, this precedent? The most important thing that we have to consider is not guilty doesn't mean innocent. It just means that your name is cleared up of something. It can be because there's not enough evidence incriminating you, or because you are hired a very good lawyer that's just amazing on representing your case, so that the judge is absolutely convinced. But this doesn't mean that you cannot be sued again if there is further evidence incriminating you. For example, if the case is reopened in the future. A famous example is PDD, who had rape allegations in the past, but now more and more people speak and provide evidence that he raped and groomed people. PDD got away scot-free in the past because he had resources to hire good lawyers and he had evidence real good. But now with more people incriminating him, he is finally caught. Right. I want to preempt something said by the government, but it's already said. The government might say that it's a form of compensation to its time, resources, and mental capabilities that went into the trial in itself. Our response is that it is a decision made by the person in itself because they want to come off as not guilty. That's why they are present in court, because they want to prove something. It is the necessary effort that they have to give out in order to be able to reach the point where they are claimed as not guilty, where they are free to walk out of the courtroom without a punishment on their name or criminal record. That is enough compensation as it is in the status quo, and we do not need to add more to it because principally it is enough that they are proven not guilty. My biggest question to SideGov that they said that compensation would fix people's lives, but stigma doesn't just go away in a second. It is not an exclusive benefit on their side because the only difference is that you get some sort of compensation, which is still unclear on their side, whether it's money or anything. So they describe so many things, but they never actually provided you the real and exact mechanism on how their world would look. So do not champion them. Stigma is not exclusive. It would happen. It's a symmetrical benefit. Symmetrically happens on our side, it's happens on their side, but at least on our side, their name is cleared off. At the end of the day, their name is cleared off, and that is enough compensation at the end of the day. So on to my argument. It is principally wrong to justify them because first, it is justified for them to be there. Again, just like my framing, when you get to the point of a case that's being tested in court, it means that there's enough basis or evidence to either prove you are a suspect in the eyes of the law. Both you and the court have expended resources to get you to the point where you are now. You being declared not guilty is compensation enough because you are avoiding conviction of jail, community service, criminal record, and etc. The second thing is they have not realized is we do not have the resources to that. We put enough strain on our judicial system, enough as it is. Judges, you must realize that in every country, especially in the law system, there are always going to be limited resources or funding to operate the system in the first place, which is why they always filter the people on the basis of whether or not they're a viable suspect for the case to be taken to trial. To expend that much resources, which still has not been described by the government, so we'll assume it's in the form of money, to expend that much resources just for the trial to run and put on top this compensation is unjust because at the end of the day, you are putting a lot of unnecessary weight on the system. This would complicate the process of criminal processing because now they have to thin out their budget so much to the point that they might not be able to run the trial or any trial at the end of the day because now people just start demanding for more compensation that the court cannot provide. That somehow they cannot provide, and in their world they will provide, and so that creates again a strain on the budget on the justice system. This takes away money from the important aspects of the country, especially for the law bodies, which is to enforce and punish people who are proven guilty for their crimes in the first place. So on the government side, they are justifying the legal body taking fundings that strips away the necessary money to develop other important aspects of the country, or even may have the judicial system run as it is right now. It should not be to compensate people who aren't guilty, but the money should be used to improve and to be allocated towards the priority to prioritize on what is more important in the judicial system or the country. For example, cannot take away money from other aspects such as infrastructure, such as education, transport, etc. It puts a strain in judicial body, and it puts even more strain on the judicial body now, because you are forced to compensate these people just because they are forced to be there, just because they are forced to be there and they want to be there to prove themselves not guilty, so they can walk away free at the end of the day without a conviction, without a jail time or any community service, or without a criminal record. That is enough, and you feel that the check and balance when people realize that you are not guilty. That means that okay, now this person, they in the eyes of the people, they think they're innocent because yeah, okay, they're proven not guilty and they're not related to this crime. So at the end of the day, whatever benefit that OG is trying to claim still falls right under our house. For that, proud to.
And then speaker for the fan speech. Next, calling upon DPM, Tamisher. See here.
Hi, am I audible?
Audible, but can you speak louder?
Okay.
What about now? Okay, just checking once again, am I audible?
This is like the voice is still small in my end. I don't know if it's on me or the other, probably other judges or other teams can confirm. Yeah.
It's a bit soft.
Okay, since it's an everyone, so
Okay.
like you can probably use like earphone and microphone or whatever.
Okay, what about now? Am I audible?
This is better.
All right, thank you. Wait, this one's echo?
Yeah, everyone can help to confirm as well, because like in me it's fine.
Yep, I think it's fine.
All right, okay. My drink. All right, pure preference, I will prioritize CO for post-bench engagement. But yeah, but always okay if you don't PR. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Two independent rebuttals first to opening opposition. First, I don't think LO understand what state prosecution look like. There are not law firms that you can choose. Cases are assigned to you by the state as a state prosecutor. So you cannot cherry pick cases, right? Because it is assigned to you. And it looks bad to your superior if you refuse certain cases, and it probably means that the chances of you getting promoted if you refuse these cases, yeah, the reputation that you have as a state prosecutor will probably be bad. But I think what's important that even if there is compensation and there are certain pressure to state prosecutor to prove cases, I think this exists in the other side as well. That's why that it means proving your case by state prosecutor means that there are far more reputational benefit that you get, and you are more likely to be promoted. So I don't think it's a parameter or a fiat within the debate that opening opposition can say that state prosecutors are not going to choose certain cases. Second response, I think on the limited resource analysis, I don't think this is a parameter that should be talked about within the debate, because on their side of the house, any alternative are probably going to use the same amount of money. But I'm going to prove to you first why compensation only exists when you cannot prove certain cases, and the fact that compensation is a financial liability that are going to be far more incentive for you to fix the court in order for you to not pay compensation in the end of the day. I'm going to talk about two things in my argument. I'm going to extend the principle of urgency that my PM talks about, but I'm also going to extend as to why court gets far better on our side of the house. First, on the financial and social front, I think my PM has talked about this quite extensively. That is to say that the cost of going to court and the fact that you are more likely to get out of your job, because oftentimes corporations don't want to gamble. Because here's the thing: the process of proving you guilty of not guilty is something that takes probably months, because trials take that long. So in that 6 months, yeah, your corporate, the places in which you work with are probably not going to take a gamble in which whether or not you are proven guilty or not guilty. So they probably preemptively fire you just in case you are proven guilty. Because having someone who works for you and then becoming a criminal is just bad reputation for the business, right? So they face a lot of public scrutiny. The demand from court dates, even pre-trial detention of going to jail, means that company's reputation, means that people lose their jobs or suspended, so which impacts a significant decline in their economy, which impacts their ability to meet their expenses, pay bills, or support their families. I think what opposition tries to rebut this by saying that when they're proven not guilty, they can just go back to society. That's not true, because I think the scrutiny of just the fact that you are close enough to a crime scene in which you are accused by the police, and the fact that you go to jail is enough of a reputational blemish onto you by a lot of people, right? So individuals, a lot of them face a lot of challenges in securing future employment, exactly due to stigma. A lot of employers hesitate to hire you simply because there is a criminal accusation within your record, even if you're proven not guilty, because it is still a perception that a lot of people and society in general sees you as someone who might not or might be a criminal, and probably society don't take that gamble and just assume that you are a criminal. And this is, and the extension that I want to give is in the context as to who exactly tends to be more prominent in these issues. That is that minority communities who oftentimes face systemic biases by law enforcement, things like racial profiling by the police, oftentimes means that disproportionately get arrested regardless of whether or not they're guilty. So all of the social stigma and the financial harm that we tell you actively impact minority far more than the general population. The fact that they are poor, they're more likely to be poor even before getting arrested, and the fact that they get arrested means that they're more likely to get fired in the end of the day. Even if they do get a job in opening option in best case, it's likely for these jobs to be very low paying, to the extent that a lot of high paying jobs in corporations are unlikely to want to gamble that idea. So they often resort to very minimum wage jobs, which is still not enough to kind of improve their life standards. So what we tell you is that compensation, therefore, becomes essential to help these individuals rebuild themselves financially and socially as well. It provides a buffer for them to recover lost income, to rebuild savings that are depleted during the trial process, means that they're enabled to return to a similar standard of living that they had before the accusation. The second extension that I'm going to give you on how this improves the court system. Starting the premise is simple. Implementing compensations means that any wrongful conviction and mistaken accusations means there are financial payouts that the state has to go through. Meaning the state obviously don't want that. So there are more incentives for courts and the state and prosecution to be far more meticulous in explaining the rulings, in documenting all steps taken to ensure that due process actually exists. Why is this the case? And I think this is just simple premise. Why? One, obviously financial, but also reputational issue. Meaning that if you're a judge or a state prosecutor, you have a record in which you cannot prove your cases, and to the fact that you force the state to pay exactly due to your failings within court, means that you have more incentive preemptively to improve yourself, to improve the court, to really be more thorough, be more accurate, and have better evidence collection practices. So preemptively, you have fewer wrongful accusations of wrongful arrest. Because here's the thing: because the fact that you are forced by the state, the fact that you are forced, that you are forcing the state to pay for your failings means that your ability to jump the career mobility within your workplace, i.e., if you want to get promoted into a judge, or if you want to get promoted to a captain or whatever in the police, means that you have incentive to do that as well. So what does the process look like? I think the ability for you to exhaustively vetting all evidence before making arrests or before making charges means that officers or detectives on the ground become more careful in their work. We think that because there are a lot of financial harms in which, if they resort to the racial profiling or like terrible investigation process means that they're more likely to have terrible reputation on our side of the house, which means they're more likely to understand that any more evidence that they put into the court means that they are more likely to get depromoted or get deprioritized in things like in this like promotion within their workplace. For all these reasons, proud to propose.
At the speaker for the fan speech, next calling upon the all time is yours. See here.
Hello, am I audible?
Audible.
POI preference, just speak up, open your mic because I cannot see the chat. Um, Stopping my speech in 3, 2, 1. We think that the government wants to play it safe and cites a concern about how the justice system takes cases in the first place. Because they lack resources, we think the justice system will not just prosecute everything. You are right in that state prosecutors' job is to prosecute every case that is handed to them, but those cases will be vetted in the first place by Kejaksa, by the police, by all the criminal investigators who, when a case is first presented to the police, so that every case that goes to court requires the defendant to have at least enough evidence to be incriminated, meaning that there is still a moral imperative to prosecute them because they cannot get away scot-free since we have enough evidence to at least put them in a place that they can be sued. Because if you ignore this, it becomes unfair to the people who sue them because these people, these defendants, at least have something that can relate them into the case in the first place. The OG has, we think that the OG still has failed to clearly define what this compensation would look like, how it would then deter the social stigma from resurfacing into the public, how then it will guarantee that these people who are wrongfully sued, as they state it, are completely innocent and have no relations at all to the case in which is our primary concept here in their own argument. We think that it is unfair and frankly irrelevant for the government to play the political card when discussing the justice system, because we think that even in this day, even if the justice system and the political elite is so conservative and discriminatory, we still live in a democratic world where citizens ultimately get the final say. And since the democratic world is already progressive enough for common citizens to recognize they and their friends or relatives who are female, who are minorities, who are of another race to have similar rights and responsibilities to them under law, which ultimately creates an incentive for those boomers to be responsible in the first place because they want to stay in power, because they want to be elected, because they want to present themselves as the best option to the citizens. And here we will pick the government case part one by one. Remember Tesla's framing that the justice system is expensive and government needs to allocate resources wisely. This means that even if the boomers are interested in protecting their own power, they will pick cases wisely and not try to incriminate every of their political opponents or the racial minorities or whatever, simply because they don't have enough resources to do that. Also, since we live in a democracy where they can be voted out by the people, incriminating people based on political opinion will just turn public opinion against you because you essentially weaponize the justice system against your opponents. The government wants to bring the benefit that people who got sued will have their name rehabilitated. Okay, we say victims of political persecution already have their name rehabilitated in the first place because the common people, the voters, the common folk understand that they are being tried, they are being persecuted because of political targeting. For example, the case of Ahok, who is persecuted because he said something about another religion, but it turns out that hundreds of thousands, even millions of people defend Ahok because they know that behind those incriminating cases that are being that Ahok is being sued because there is a motive by Ahok's political opponents to jail him so that he cannot speak out against them. So that is how you have the check and balance that guarantees that the boomer conservative politicians cannot just weaponize the justice system because they also praise public opinion. Furthermore, their only benefit is contingent on the stigma of being sued if gone completely. They have not provided a mechanism for this, which is enough for you to dismiss their case, but we will provide likelihood of why this will not happen because regardless if you are paid or not, compensated or not, you were sued, and that stigma will stick to you forever just because of that event. So we want to bring that this stigma is not exclusive. We hold that being declared not guilty is compensated enough because it means that the state has already cleared you of all criminal record and police notice because the state essentially tells you that okay, you are not in we have declared that you are not involved in this case anymore. The evidence clears you of any wrongdoing. Even in the case of people who are wrongfully imprisoned, like the case of Central Park 5 in New York, people will recognize that they are wrongfully imprisoned based on the fact that the state cleared them of all criminal record and established that they are innocent. We do not see how any financial compensation is gonna help the process of clearing this stigma because it just gives because it's essentially a nothing burger. It's just something that the state gives you after you are essentially having been cleared of any liabilities, any incrimination by the justice system. Eventually, we have the process of check and balance where a person who has been defamed, denigrated, can sue back the person who put them in court simply because if you are wrongfully sued and people know that you are wrongfully sued, there's gonna be public opinion form public opinion form that you are essentially the party that is someone does something wrong to you so that you are wrongfully sued. I think that's enough mechanism of public opinion in a democracy that can support the moment you can sue the person who bring you to court back. But now to my extension, how will things get worse under this proposal? We notice that the government lacks mechanisms, so we will question everything. Given compensation to someone who is declared not guilty will be unfair to the effort of the justice system. How will you establish that someone will not be incriminated again in the future? If another evidence is discovered to incriminate them, what is your guarantee that they will not be incriminated again in the future? For example, Tesa's example of PDD who got jailed in the future because there are more evidence placed against him. And even if this is not the case, they are 100% innocent, this still will be bad because essentially, um, essentially, you have the government giving free handouts to people without guarantee that they will be completely innocent. Why it is not exclusive on the side? When you walk away claimed as not guilty, there will be no criminal record at the end of the day, and we believe that trials are not an incentive every day to the point that they will lose their job just because they're attending this trial. They can take leave or duty to avoid suspicion at the end of the day. The check and balance that exists on our side is even if people think you are criminal because you go to court, then your claim not guilty, people will sympathize and understand, which I have explained earlier. And ultimately, we think that this will be even more of a burden to minorities because when they do get compensated, they think that this is just another way that they are being discriminated by the law system, even though money is important. They think that now there is a new form of discrimination that you're essentially the party that's got the short stick and now they're trying to compensate by giving some amount of money. I mean, you cannot clear the social stigma of being a minority. So we do not see how the effect that is the government is proposing will exist at the end of the day. Protopos.
Attend the speaker for the fan speech. To open closing half, calling upon member Golf. Time is yours. See here.
Hi, I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
All right. Okay, for POI, I really encourage OO to POI. Anyway, yeah, gender pronouns nggak ada, neutral aja. Just call me as member. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Imagine a world where mere accusations of crime could shatter your life, leaving you stripped of your dignity, your freedom, and your future. Imagine facing a system that presumes that you are a guilty individual, therefore they will never compensate you, where the burden falls upon you to prove your innocence against the overwhelming odds of the justice system that is imperfect in its very nature. And even if you emerge from this ordeal exonerated and declared not guilty, the scars of injustice remain. Your reputation's tarnished, your opportunities lost, your life is irrevocably altered. Is this the justice system we strive for? We don't believe in this. We think the justice system should compensate for their failures at the end of the day. We must redefine what the compensations will look like at the end of the day, because we think three things. Firstly is capital compensation. This looks like state paying a certain amount of capital towards the innocent people based on the damage that they are done to the individuals, for example. This is probably decided by the hakim, etc. But B is restoring their reputations, things like public statement, removal of the criminal record, and the statement that they are good people like SKCK whatsoever. This is something that OG missed to identify. But thirdly is also rehabilitations, things like psychological help. For example, in Canada, for example, people that are, are going into this process, for example, get the psychological rehab, for example, as the compensation of their wrongful accusations. We think this compensations is good at the end of the day, right? So directly goes to the rebuttals, right? OO's main argument is two things. Firstly, that the state have epistemic gap to know whether or not they are truly innocent, because they already collect evidence that are enough to make them participate in the law process at the end of the day. But number one, in CGS, there are presumptions of innocence. It is a core principle in any fair justice system. If a person is acquitted, their legal status is that of innocence in the eyes of law. Refusing compensation because of epistemic gaps undermines this presumption, suggesting that individuals must continuously prove their innocence at the end of the day. But secondly, I think that states can know that they misunderstand the evidence at the end of the day, right? So that the fact of evidence present in the court is not enough to prove that this person might be guilty. They can, I think that in the cases of not guilty, for example, is the case the state knows, or the judges knows, for example, that they misunderstand the correlations between all of this evidence at the end of the day. So that's enough. But second rebuttal is that they say it's reduced the efficiency of the law because it's strained the budget, meaning less things or less courts will happen. Number one, no, I think generally state money is big. We can like proportionally increase taxes, for example. We can have great tax revenue. We can have state budget, for example, and many other instruments for the states to get money. But secondly, we think this is a wise use of taxpayer money, because compensating wrongfully accused individuals should be viewed as necessary investment in maintaining just and accountable legal system. We think it's worth it. But before that, sure.
The people would see this as an effort or a form of swap or bribe, especially with the lack of trust from the public. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, perfect. That's my extension. Trust to the state and social participation. We think on a big scale, compensating wrongfully accused individuals helps to restore public confidence in the government and its institutions. But because the problem right now is that there are many resentment against police institutions, against the legal institutions, because of the collective trauma, because of this individual, for example. There are bad reputations in the media, for example. There are bad there are bad studies that shows that the legal system is unfair and whatsoever. A policy that openly addresses errors and shows government's dedications to uphold true justice system is crucial to make societies get trust because of the history of mistrust in the legal system, for example. This helps to reduce that. Why is this important? Two reasons. Firstly, it's going to increase the participation in justice system, because reasonably if the people distrust the government, then there's going to be a collective action problem when, for example, big cases, for example, are taking a lot of like efforts and money, for example, because of the lack of evidence and lack of saksi, for example, that want to get involved, for example. Because of this, people are afraid of being wrongfully punished or being attacked by the powerful big criminal, for example, at the end of the year, right? We think if the state ensures that there are going to be compensations if you are wrongfully attacked, then it will increase the participation in justice system itself. But secondly, we think that this is just the obligation of government, because we think that distrust to the legal system increases just stress and and anxiety, right? Creating a high we think low trust society. I mean, like, it's going to be very stressful and people anxious because people are feeling very scared when they near police, for example. They feel terrorized when they get when the police stops them and whatsoever. We think that this is not the status quo, the society that we want to live in. We think that governments have special obligations to still uphold still maintain the trust of the people and ensures that legal system is not scary, but legal system is truly upholding justice. We think this is new and this is very important. But the second extension, I want to make mechanize opening government a bit, because I think the concern of OO is true. I mean, changing stigma is a bit hard at the end of the day, right? It is true that the target of these policies is racial minorities and marginalized group, for example, that is disproportionately targeted, for example, that gets stigmatizations, that gets, for example, fear mongering by the political actor whatsoever because of the open border rhetoric and whatsoever, right? Why we think money and rehabilitations empowers them to reintegrate with the society. This is new, right? Because it's going to answer OO that still questions why compensations is going to change suddenly the stigma, right? Firstly, we think that compensations allows individuals to afford, for example, rehabilitative measures like therapy, counseling, and rehabilitation services, helping them cope with the mental health issues, for example, rebuild their confidence, for example, and restores their sense of worth because they have money, for example, right? I think that this is the prerequisite for you to rehabilitate to society, because you want to make sure that your mentality after this very stressful process gets better. But secondly, we think that funds can be used for like vocational training, skill development, and higher educations. This is good. But thirdly, also it's political acknowledgement of the state. I think this is very important, that at the very least, state compensations uniquely sends the narrative that the state recognize its failure, for example, that state recognize that it makes an error, for example, so that it's going to, better off the narrative about these particular people in the society, because there are concrete proof that the state acknowledged their errors. We think that it's good for them, enables them to reintegrate to the society better. This is more believable than OG. Very proud to propose. Thank you.
And then speaker for the fan speech. Next, calling upon member up. Tamisha here.
Okay, am I audible?
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay, wait. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. First thing I want to establish, who are the victim and most likely going to be the victim of these cases. This looks like minority groups that tend to get stereotyped as violent. This looks like Black people walking down at the street at a random night getting accused of drugs or doing any other violent crimes. This looks like Puerto Ricans, for example, who get accused for stealing when they're just walking randomly. Or this simply looks like minorities or religion who are getting arrested more easily comparing to the majority, right? Because there is a huge stereotype. I think this most likely are the people who are going to be the most vulnerable in this debate, the minority people. I'm going to explain to you why then the victim will be better off in our side. But first, I want to engage with government support. First, notice how in PM they talk about how the system is unfair, it's prejudiced by boomers judges, or first come first serve, or whatever the PM characterized. We think then, if this is true, if this context is true, I don't understand why you think that your case about compensation then run. Because I would argue if the system is very unfair, it's hard for you to even win in the first place. Therefore, the benefit of getting compensation in the first place is hardly achieved, right? But second, they give a justification, right? Because they talk about, this victim are now hurt, they get harmed, therefore it's good to have compensation. This is also the best case based on my first response. Second, I don't think the compensation have any delta anywhere. For you to go to court, regardless of winning and losing, you have reputation harm because people don't really look at the follow-up. People just see who is accused first. Even if you don't think this is true and this is very worst case, sure. But in the process of getting to court, you still have to take time off work. You have to burn money. You have to burn time too, because this court is a very long process. There is anxiety if you want to win or not. If there is a lot of costs that you are going to give, regardless of you win or not. Best case, you win, but this not fix the stigma. Sure, you get money, but what good does money give you when you can't even get your time back can't get your like time with your relationship back, can't get back to work because there is stigma. I don't think this is a good case. Even if you get money, I would respond to in my case. Why then even that you get money, even if you get compensation, it still leads to bad things. So then framing. We argue if the system is already bad anyway, then the debate should be about which one. I think the weighing that is we should be taking a preventive measure in this case. Therefore, people are gonna less coming, get less involved with the court itself. So going into my case, I think this accusation have no when it has no benefit when you win or you lose. When you win, it means when the accusation becomes true, there is no incentive. Most likely, what if you really want to sue someone, most likely it will only happen if they are totally sure whether the cost right now is bigger than them actually going to court. What does this mean? This means it increases the barrier of entry for someone to even accuse someone. This is good because accusing someone in status quo is already something that is happening a lot, right? We think when we improve the barrier of entry, it means less preventive measure because it means less people have to go through the process of court, less people will go to harm anyway. It's far better this way because OG case about mitigation or fixing stigma is very unlikely. I think in our side, if you don't even go to the process itself, the benefit of you and the harm will be mitigated perfectly in our side. Second, it also means that it's less. I know that OO already talked that people are not going to judge as much, but OO only assume in the best case where we're going to be taking a more charitable approach. Even if we don't live in a democratic state and there is racism, it's still better in our side. Because regardless, because it means when people are now, there is a high barrier of entry and there is a high barrier of entry, I think it means less people are going to get accused. It means less justification for them to blame the black people. The problem with the status quo is they don't see the follow-up. They see when a lot of black people are getting to court and getting arrested, they associate it with crime, and then they don't even see the follow-up, and they simply stereotype black people as harm. When this thing becomes less, I would argue that this means the stereotype of people will be far less. This is much better for victim. At the end of the day, this already should be debate winning. But second, let's talk about check and balances or the process of court will be better. I think OG talks about this. We'll also clash with this and we will take this one. A, the accusation, it means less burden for public lawyer, i.e. this, I think this is good because public lawyer is most likely the alternative that most minority go through because they don't have money resource to pay for good lawyer, which is good, right? The problem right now when there's a lot of accusation, there is so much burden for public lawyer, they have to multitask and they cannot represent accurately. Meaning, when you make the burden less, it means more likely they are able to provide high quality representation. They are able to analyze your case specifically, make it personal to you, and make the chance of you getting represented far better in our side. This is already exclusive in our side. B, when there is less risk for being sued because there is no like benefit for it, right? I think it means more likely people are going to be comfortable with voicing out their opinion, like victims and black peoples, like Puerto Ricans, for example, like women, for example, more likely they are now more comfortable because they know unless it's extremely bad, they are not going to get sued, they're not going to get harmed. Why is this good? Because evidence in both sides are not going to be perfect. Because not evidence are all traceable. Some are verbal. Some are simply based on testimonies. OO talks about PDD accusation, but they never explain to you how their case was found in the first place. You need to understand the reason why PDD's accusation and was like suspected is because there is a lot of testimonies, which gives justification for people to investigate further. And then that's the prerequisite for PDD's case to be found and to be investigated and for people to take accountability for them. It's also engaged with CG because they want to talk about address of error. We say addressing the error and participation will only happen if you are comfortable with explaining it. This happens in our side. But lastly, in the best case, even if OG's case about, we have compensation, I would argue this is still bad because now you take away the urgency for people to help. In status quo, when they are not compensated, there are more likely people trying to help you. They empathize with the situation and they accept you. The problem in the best case scenario, when they do get money, the issue then become people don't see it as beneficial to help you because they think you already got help. You don't need their help. Therefore, it's less likely for them to help you. More likely they're going to focus on other people. Meaning OG's best case scenario is also, we are also mitigating their best case scenario. What does this mean then? judge, you need to buy this because we are the only one who's helping the victim. If we cannot fix the system, it's better off we prevent them to go into the system itself. Proud to oppose.
And then a speaker for the final speech to close Gov bench, calling upon Govip. Let me sure see here.
Check. Am I audible?
Yep, audible.
Okay. Wait a second. I'll set my timer. Wait. Yep, that is much better. POI, unmute. Don't put it in the chat. I won't be able to read it. Thank you. Preferred gender pronoun are she, her, but preferably just call me as whip. Yeah. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. The trauma of people getting gun pointed on you just because you seemed like you steal something. The money that you lost from the rejected job because you have gone through a lot of detention. The narrative of people pointing their hands at you, distancing themselves after getting out of this tension. This is more harmful if we're talking about people with racial minorities, with people with less capital, for example. This is the world that opposition's world's going to look like because there is no compensation to begin with. There is no giving back their reputation. There is no economic compensation that is given by the government. Government simply only going to say, oh yeah, you're innocent, and just that. I think like this is much more harmful because then under the rest of the house, they could not protect their most vulnerable actor in this debate purpose. I think like the framing why we win in this debate already is getting the money is very crucial to this wrongfully accused. This fixes your relationship with the family, getting healthcare after sickening process of the trials, paying your debt after hiring private lawyers or lawyers that cost you 200 million rupiah and etc. Right? This is exclusively on CG. We frame to you why then this is much more important and why then this is much more beneficial under our side of the house. But then before moving to the comparison between 4 benches, I'm just going to rebut the opposition bench first. I think like in terms of returning their credibility, this is a form of compensating. I think like member have explained to you how then the compensating will works under our side of the house. This means that their stance is basically okay, we're going to compensate but not compensate, right? I don't think that you can count this mechanism to begin with. But then in terms of the biggest framing coming from OO is on how then these people will not actually getting to prosecution if they don't have enough evidence. But then we have to assume that we have to know the fact that evidence comes in a wider stance. There is saksi, for example. There is things that probably they just go to near the criminal scene, for example, right? I think like the reality is not like that to begin with. These people that is getting shot or as simple as detained because they seem to steal because there's people who see them, for example, or they are seen in that case. You cannot say that this is not happening under the status quo because then if it's not happening, I don't know why the motion exists in the first place, right? This is the problem and rooted problem in the status quo that we have to solve to in the end of the day. I think like one of the biggest case that come from opening opposition is how then they will demand more compensation. They will take more money on important things, for example. I don't think this is possible to begin with because then I think these people are only gonna think about, oh yeah, I'm getting, like my credibility getting resolved and whatnot, and I get the capital. I think like that is the bare minimum, and I think like that is what people want is the state to acknowledge their fault of getting wrongly accused someone, right? This is what people want to actually gain their trust to begin with. But then second, I think like the mechanisms already make like state are more careful regarding taking cases because then in the end of the day they know, oh, if I wrongly accuse, if then my police wrongly accuse a minority getting them into court, I need to pay a certain amount of money and giving them a better like credibility and whatnot, right? This makes a better check and balance towards the states as well. But then thirdly, I think like even if this is true that they need like more compensation and whatnot, member have stated to you on how then this is from the text as well. I think like it's from citizens to citizens. I don't think this is much problem in the end of the day. Rather like like giving this money to like people that are not contributing towards the citizens as well, right? So I don't think that this is a problem to begin with. That is why like we debunked the case of OO. But then let's go to CO then on how then they prove to you about stereotype, like better voicing out and like less urgencies for society to organically help these individuals. I think like in terms of stereotype, if we want to make it, like equal between both sides of the house, I think it's just equal, but then this will be much harder under the side of the house simply because there is no compensation coming from the, like country and whatnot, right? But then secondly, I think like in terms of better voicing out, this actually happens if state actually acknowledge their fault, meaning a better trust towards, like the government and whatnot. I think like this much more happen. I think like, my member have explained the whole process of analysis. You have to take this judge. But then like in terms of last urgencies of the society to organically help the individual, I think like the problem that with the bottom-up approach that CG championed is two things. First, reliant to donation, which is uncertain to begin with. But then B, there's like the money is very limited compared to state. The amount to help wouldn't be as much as state, right? Because then in the end of the day, we notice that state have a lot of money and they actually, like allocate a lot of money to social criminal justice system itself, making them have a better capital comparatively. If then we're talking about, like government opposition side of the house, when they rely to the, like society's help, I don't think like there's an incentive for lawyer to actually take pro bono cases, because then in the end of the day they know this will be just be donation in the end of the day, right? But then under our side of the house, in terms of how lawyers could be actually, better in defending them, is because state actually pay them to begin with, right? With somehow a lot of money in the end of the day. This is why then under our side of the house, we think like in terms of urgencies of the society, this will just not happen and this will be just not untrue, right? But let me frame to you, let me compare to you why then CG win in this debate. There are a few things that we have proven to you, right? First, in the terms of better mechanisms, we give you three setup. First, in terms of capital compensation. Secondly, in terms of socialing their restoring their reputation, on how then we have proven to you as well how then the compensation that comes from OO that is given is simply a compensation, meaning this is a government mechanisms to begin with. But then thirdly, on how then rehabilitation and psychological help, which is not actually stated by OG. But then this is a fresh and new extension on how then the trust on state and judicial power, how then this is also the obligation of government that ensures this trust, as well as the government interest to actually, like having a good credibility, or as simple as wanting to be re-elected in the end of the day, right? This is what you don't get under OG. But then secondly, we've proven to you a whole new, like mechanisms regarding how racial minorities or probably people who have no capital to begin with are being protected. We protect two most vulnerable actors in this debate. First, people in a minority, either it's capital, either it's racial, or probably people that have, like disabilities and whatnot, right? But then secondly, we also protect the state and giving a better livelihood towards the citizens, because then in the end of the day, the growth of trust that we get under CG is much more better, simply because of, like state acknowledging their own faults, meaning we give a better solution purpose.
And then the speaker for the fan speech, last but not least, calling upon Opwip Tamishir. See here.
Hai Kak, audible nggak ya?
Audible.
Oke. Will I preference through chat? Wait, I'm still setting for my personal timer. Okay. Um, Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Let's first respond to how government bring to this debate, right? First, OG. OG talks about how and then this will damage the damage of how and then you are going to like be
going to trial and stuff will scale with the duration of time. Like for example, this affect your name, finance, and future opportunity. But we think that on our side, it's not going to be as bad as how they say. We think that there are already attempts to for example to like clean their name, or like people then being able to like accept their presence in the society. One, the judge will formally announce that they are not guilty, meaning they will not also get no criminal record, meaning that on our side they are still able to like get job or be be known that they are not at wrong on our side, right? Second, the accuser will get punishment, or like they are going to like make an apology statement, or and use and influence, meaning that their loss are already like avenged and stuff, right? But third, you are now like protected by law for further discrimination. There are like a legal order that you are now not be able to be like discriminated by people, saying that you are a bad person and stuff. And lastly, there are going to be like people like news or influencer discussing your issue, telling the truth about you are not being guilty. There are going to be like sympathy coming towards society, meaning these are like the attempt on our side that going to be cleaning your name, meaning that people will still understand on our side that you are not at wrong, that they are still be able to like accept you. But this is on meaning that you're still going to be able to back on society on our side. But this is going to be better on our side as people see there are no compensation, meaning there are more needs for them to be sympathized by people, because now because on our side when there's no compensation, meaning that they are seen as very pitiful, meaning that people will want to help them because there has not been done justice, right? The benefit on our side answer government's concern regarding not being able to go back to society after the trial, because on our side there are going to be more acceptance toward them, right? But I will flip government case. Why then giving back money is actually like going to be bad on people like being sympathetic to those people, right? People think that they are already people now will think that on our side, they are already well compensated, since if it is as bad as what OG said, meaning that the state or accuser are going to be like give big amount of money, meaning there will be no incentive or for people to be sympathetic towards them in regards to spreading the news, because they are already paid well. They are actually like getting more money than other people, for example. Their harms about damaging the reputation then becomes more severe on their side, as there are going to be minimum attempt to clean their name, as the money is already seen as something that is a responsibility of government, but they are not going to be like attempt to clean your name. But how then you should with this particular issue? The act of to cleaning name is going to be exclusive on our side, as the prerequisite of broad and massive attempt for people to be like cleaning your name that can only happen when the falsely accused get no compensation, because they are now seen as needing one, right? By the society, right? On their side, you only give the money, which A, might not help anyway if they're still difficult to get job on your side, or B, they're still rejected by society, that people do not want to socialize with them, then the money will be useless on their side, right? This erase the sole, but also this will erase the sole reason for people to become sympathetic on your side, meaning that people will not care about you being proven not guilty and stuff, right? This also create the mindset that when someone or a particular government made a mistake, money will always be the answer. This will directly also respond to how CG come to this debate, saying that this will restore public confidence to government, increasing participation in justice system. We think that this is exactly why they are not going to be readjusting of their system, because now the compensation are when seen as already doing government's responsibility, right? This also affect people's incentives to push or like to criticize for better justice system, because people see that are already attempt by government, but when the attempt is useless the money itself, right? Meaning that they are not going to be like doing more for the justice system, as they are already doing something at least. But even on the practical level, they are going to have less funding, for example, to be allocated to better their justice system, meaning that the likelihood of them on their side is going to be like a better justice system is very very minimum, right? But this means justice. contrary on our side, the betterment of justice system are going to be better on our side, as the consequences are now very are even if the consequences exactly because the consequences are like harsh, meaning that this push people to criticize that for government to have like the best quality of like justice, yeah, to be justice. Will also want to minimize the amount of people then being affected by how government is not doing of people getting like wrongly accused on their side. That meaning that yeah, this is not exclusive. It also happen on our side. But if CG wants to bring like yeah, you will get like psychological rehabilitation as compensation rather than money. This benefit only applies to someone who are traumatized or needing rehab. For other victim, we don't think that this apply, meaning that this yeah impact the smallest amount of people on this debate, right? This is something that is going to be far worse than on that side, as now you are seen more connected with the case, prolonging the probability of people speculating that you are like for example at the wrong, but also worsening the harm that Kika has told you about. They have to sacrifice your time, meaning more time you need to sacrifice to like going to rehabilitation and stuff. This also, but we think I think that my response also applies to this case where people now see that they do not need to help anymore because yeah, like they already get like those psychological rehabilitation, meaning yeah, there will be no sympathy. But lastly to OO, they talk they only told you about how the justification is yeah, or only answer why it's not okay to not pay or to pay them only on level of justification, but CO is the one explaining to you that it's going to bring more harm. We are better. We explain to you how the barrier of entry itself means less accusation in quantity. We make people more comfortable to speak up. It means the process of quality itself is better. Notice how their case is based even if everyone is democratic. We take the charitable response. We argue that even if racism is less, when less black people go to court, it means less stereotype because they have the justification to do so. We win in regard of respondent as well. We also talking that the one talking about the vulnerable actor and the outcome, or talks about being not guilty is enough. We expand further why by avoiding the process itself, it is much better since they do not have to go out cost. This means the harm on going unfair court is highly mitigated. Even if they have to go to court, at least because less action, less burden, more quality, less precision, we manifest this benefit.
And then a speaker for the fan speech that marks the end of this round. Congratulations everyone for finishing the quarterfinal.